Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy podcast. Each week, we expose the faulty foundational mindsets of the past and rebuild a newer, stronger foundation essential in creating your meaningful legacy. We've got a lot of work to do, so let's get started. As much as you like this podcast, I'm certain that you're going to love the book that I just released on Amazon, Fuel Your Legacy, The 9 Pillars to Build a Meaningful Legacy. I wrote this to share with you the experiences that I had while I was identifying my identity, how I began to create my meaningful legacy, and how you can create yours. You're going to find this book on Kindle, Amazon, and as always on my website, samknickerbocker.com. Welcome back to Fuel Your Legacy. This week, we have another guest from England. Man, I just love, we are crisscrossing the globe with our guests here. But Julie Barbe, she is the CEO and founder of Spark Consulting. She's a specialist in preparing startup and investment companies really to go get investors, really to get started. And that's one of the main concerns of a lot of entrepreneurs is how do we fund our dreams? How do we fund this thing that we believe is going to be the next big thing? And so in that tune, she authored her first book, Are You Investor Ready? And it's going to be coming out in the spring of 2020. Depending on the month, it may already be out here, which is exciting. I don't know exactly when your book's coming out. Maybe you don't either. We'll find out. I released a book, and so I know how that happens. Sometimes you think, oh, it's going to come out this month, and then it's the next month, and then it's the next month. So I totally get it. I'm sure my listeners have been like, oh, when's Sam's book coming out again? When's it coming out again? Well, it was going to be Christmas. I don't think we're going to have it ready by Christmas. And so, yes, it's always an interesting thing. But that's how authorship goes, making sure it's ready for the public. So go ahead, Julian, let us know kind of where you came from, why you're so passionate about helping other people get their dreams out to the world and make those dreams become a reality.
Sure. So my career has really been 20 years in large corporate financial services, working across consultancy, regulators, banks, and doing a mix of strategy work, delivering big change across big organizations, and also working in innovation, so helping those organizations to change how they act and the way that they do things for the better, hopefully. And that, I guess I've been an organizer since I was a kid. I've always been a list maker and an organizer, and I've always loved change, positive change. Since I was a child as well. So my favourite books, even when I was reading the children's classics when I was 6 and 7 and 8, were things like The Children of the New Forest, which was all about children who had transplanted from the life that they knew and dropped down somewhere else where they had to make a new life for themselves. And that always captured my attention, that kind of newness and that possibility for change. So through my whole career, that's kind of always been something that's present in all the roles that I've had. And then kind of towards the end of that 20 years in large corporates, I'd got married. I'd had my son, who's now 4.5, and I really started to hit the point where the standard corporate life wasn't feeling like it fitted anymore with the lifestyle that we wanted. So I wanted the flexibility to be around for my family when I need to, and 25 days of standard holiday doesn't really allow that to happen. And also standard hours, standard needing to be in the office a set number of days a week, all of those things were starting to feel pretty constricting. And then alongside that, where I was doing innovation work in some of these large corporates, some of that involved being on panels where startup companies came in and pitched to these large corporates for either investment as a corporate venture capitalist, or for corporate sales. So they were trying to sell whatever their service or product was to the large corporate. And I was getting increasingly frustrated because I was seeing them have this amazing opportunity in front of massive global organization, and they'd got that far and then they would fall on their face because they weren't ready. They didn't understand enough who they were talking to. They weren't aware enough of what that audience would worry about. And so that, really hampered them and really prevented the large majority of them from progressing, which when you've managed to get to that point where a large global corporate has said, come on in and talk to us, to then mess it up at that point is awful. So that kind of combination of getting frustrated at those startups, wanting a different lifestyle, and a lot of what I've done over those years in that large corporate job involve pitching to corporate boards, and persuading corporate boards to dedicate large amounts of money to various programs and projects and what have you. So I understand what it takes to reassure people enough to make people feel that what you're asking them to invest in is important enough, will actually achieve what you're saying it will, to make them give you the money. So I decided to kind of test my perceptions, and I went round and started interviewing startups who'd successfully raised investors across the full gamut, from everything from family offices, angel investors, VCs, crowdfunding platforms, to find out what they said was what they looked for. What were the things that worried them? What were the things they wanted to see? What were the things that would make them throw their hands up in disgust and walk away? To confirm whether, the things that I was looking for were the same things, whether there were commonalities across all of those, what the differences were. And then in doing that actually built up into enough content that I decided to turn that into the book, which you mentioned, Are You Investor Ready? Which will hopefully be out in March. But we will, like you say, see what that release timetable turns out to be. So that led to me launching Spark Consulting, and so now I get to work with a wide range of startups, everything from tech to healthcare to food and drink companies, to product manufacturers, and I get to work with them and really help them to, like you say, turn their dreams into a reality by helping them achieve the funding that they need. So so it's a really exciting for me.
That is incredible. I think that this is, I kind of alluded to this when I was doing the introduction for her, but this is really one of the main concerns of a lot of individuals, is how do they get funding? I've been through it myself at times, where if you're a certain type of business and there's no collateral, there's nothing, it's just an idea, no bank is going to give you money. Like, there's certain people who are just like, how do you get invested in yourself? There's a book, one of my favorite books, I think I believe it's by Brian Tracy, and I think it's called The Secret of Closing a Sale. I'm not positive, but he talks about the concept of every day you have to think of yourself as a company, and you're the CEO of your company, and every day you're attempting to sell other people's stock in your company. And the reason I bring it up and framing it that way is, as you're sitting and listening to this, you might be a mom sitting at home taking care of 2 or 3 kids. You might be a dad who loves his job working as an employee for somebody else. You might be somebody who just isn't really doing much, and you might be a teenager or a high school student. You never know. But just because you don't have a company per se to bring to market and go and pitch to somebody, the skills, the things that people are looking for, and I'm going to ask more of these, but I'm guessing they're very similar across the board in many areas of life. Not just would I put money there, but you have to think about yourself. If you're like single and looking for a spouse, you've got to know what they want. You got to do your research. And then once you find that out, you've got to present in a way that that person's going to say, yes, these skills of learning how to present are just as incredibly important as what each person needs to see for them to put their trust in you. Because ultimately, money is just value. It doesn't matter if you're in Britain or in Australia or in Africa. It doesn't matter what the monetary exchange is. It's just value. And if somebody's going to put value on the line for your dream, you've got to make it a persuasive argument.
Absolutely.
So, Julie?
Yeah, definitely. And it's really the really key thing is being able to be objective, being able to look at either your company or yourself and understand how other people would see what you're doing, and be able to understand the things that they would worry about, the things that they would want to see. And then you can, once you know those things, then you can really figure out how you can assess where you're at. So has my company kind of got ticks in all those boxes, or actually are there gaps, and do we need to do something about that before we go and try and get investment? And B, then you can make sure that when you're pitching for that investment, you absolutely make sure that you flag that we've ticked this box, we've ticked this box, we've ticked this box. What you want is to take away the ability for someone to worry, because as soon as you're talking to a potential investor, in their head they're going, I wonder if they've done this, I wonder if they've done that, I wonder if there's an issue here. And what you want is to just remove all of those worries until they've got nothing left to worry about, and it's really easy for them to say yes.
Mm-hmm.
So just kind of peeling those away and giving them that ability to freely say, this sounds great, that's a yes from me.
Yeah, and I'm gonna go in a few different directions with that, but I want to go back to her childhood, because this is something that I think my perception of children is this is a very normal thing for children, but I want to know why yours never stopped and why so many people's do. So the idea of fascination of adventure and growth, I think as a child, really from like a very young age, we're always thinking about that. We're thinking, oh, let's go crawl around. Let's put this random thing in my mouth. Let's, let's discover, let's go on an adventure and see where we are. Because some people think, oh, I couldn't relate with that. I was born and raised the same place. Julie, actually, we were talking before, she lives, 5-minute walk?
Yeah, 5-minute walk from the hospital where I was born.
I mean, that's crazy, right? So from a geolocation perspective, she hasn't really been dropped somewhere that she wasn't familiar with. But on the other hand, when you're born, you're essentially dropped into a world that you're not familiar with. And we develop, there's a great book called The Four Agreements, and we develop based on what our surrounding is. Somebody who's dropped into Africa is going to grow up with a different language, different fears, different concerns, different, I studied this in neuropsychology, but different comfort animals because of what animals were accessible to them in their growing up, right? For us in America, we're going to get certain comforts from dogs, horses, cats, the most common animals around us, where somebody from Africa gets their comfort, their animal support, their support animals are different because they actually grew up with different animals. And anyways, it's a fascinating thing to think about. But you did get dropped in to a place where you didn't know, you were learning, you had to become adventurous, you loved these books. So many people lose that through secondary school, which is their like high school, and then university. They get kind of factored into just a box of performing whatever, rather than allowing themselves to really be adventurous and do what they're passionate about. How did you maintain your thirst and hunger for adventure while so many people lose it?
Um, a couple of things. I think. I think one is that I've always been an avid reader, so I've always explored in my mind through so many different books and learnt so much. I love books where I learn new things, where I find out how something works, or how a different job works, or how a different area of the world operates. um so that's always that kind of constant thirst for knowledge. I'm a complete knowledge sponge, to the point that I hate football as a sport. I just don't enjoy watching it. I don't enjoy the sound of the crowds. But my husband likes football, and he'll have the screen on in the background, or in my background, while he's watching football. And by the time I've walked in and out of the room a couple of times, I'll be like, oh yeah, it's these teams playing, and the score's this, and so scored. And I can't avoid that stuff kind of becoming part of my brain. So I end up being able to talk about football even though I don't like it, because the knowledge is there and my brain just kind of sucks it in. So through books is a massive part of how I've probably just been really inquisitive about things, and learn to enjoy learning about new things, and being part of that. All of my career has been about change, um, and I learned fairly early on. So when I started out in the corporate world, it was just as we were kind of going through quite a big recession in the UK. And what was really obvious to me fairly quickly was that there's a high risk of redundancy. That you think you're in a good job, but actually, large corporates will go, actually, we're going to slash and burn here, and we're going to cut this, and we're going to change this. And it became really obvious to me that the people who stayed, the people who didn't get cut, were the ones who jumped on the change and volunteered to be at the front, and who were the ones that said, oh, you want to change the company in a way. How can I be at the front of that? How can I help make the change happen? And then that meant that, you were seen as a positive part of the change. And that allowed you to then stay in your job, basically. So it's kind of self-preservation, get to the front and stay there. So I think that's a big part of it as well. And I think also finally, I've been very fortunate to have some very good mentors throughout my career as well, who um, encouraged me to be braver than perhaps I would on my own, or encouraged me to look at things in new ways as well, to see opportunities. And they kind of taught me to learn to see opportunities, and to see change that I could adopt or adapt for my purposes. So I think those three are the main factors.
I could not agree more, at least in my life. Reading is number one. And it's interesting because they always say, like, the more you know that you don't know anything, right? And that's the exciting part. People think, oh, I don't need to know anymore. It's like, the fact that you think that you know enough is kind of crazy to me. But honestly, if you just went and read one book that was out of your wheelhouse, something you never thought about before, that one activity could probably spur on so much new thought processes and make you want to read even more and more and more. And so that you get that excitement, man, I just want to learn more. I just learned about how carpet was made. YouTube is a great resource as well, because you can go watch a 30-minute video about how these things are made. And just start allowing yourself to learn new things. I've been thinking about this topic specifically, about how to keep that excitement going, as I've seen my little boys. I have a 2.5-year-old, almost 3, and a 1-year-old, and just seeing how that happens, of just the trial and error, the excitement to learn something new, the excitement to like, what does this do if I move my hand this way? A few months ago, I was out trying to teach my 2.5-year-old how to bounce a basketball, and he just doesn't understand the physics of it, right? But it's that type of thing where it's, why do we stop that adventurous type of growth hunger? And I think it's that we stop learning, and we stop learning things that we're interested in, and we start being told what we have to learn. And that's a big difference between being told what you have to learn and what she said, having a mentor who can teach you how to see opportunities to learn.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a real skill in being able to see things as opportunities and not just see things for what they are on the face of it. Being able to see someone doing a job and be able to see that as an opportunity, that actually there's something there that we could improve and change and make better. It's not just that's how it is and that's how it's always been done and that's how it always will be done. Mm-hmm. That kind of being able to kind of question and challenge and all of those things are really important skills to kind of keep that freshness, I guess. But also I think it's important to to change things up. If you stay doing the same thing for a really long period of time, you get stale. It just happens to everybody. So I mean, one company out of that kind of 20-year period in large corporate, I was at one company for nearly 17 years of that period, but I did 6 different jobs in that time because it was such a massive company that I could move around and do significantly different jobs at the UK level, at the global level, working with completely different groups of people, with different stakeholders. So that was really important to me, that I would kind of get to 2 years, just over 2 years in a role, and go, no, I need to change things now. I'm going to get stale if I stay here doing this. Now I need to move and do the next thing, figure out how to do the next thing, and do that. So yeah,
I've done the same thing in my business. I probably am moving a lot faster than you are, as far as I get bored maybe easier than you do. Or I don't stick around long enough to master something. I don't know which one it is. But yeah, I'm constantly looking for ways to change or upgrade or to add another element into how my business is running. How can I engage with my clients better? How can I add more value? I mean, it's constantly, how can I do this? Still maintaining the core function of what I'm doing for my clients, but how can I add more and add more and add more and add more and keep it more exciting for me? What more things can I be serving that are exciting for me? What areas can I add in? So that's been huge. I'm curious, because I think, again, these are things that I think are applicable everywhere, but you don't know what you don't know. You want to always be reading, and the more that you know, the more you don't know. Okay. You don't know what you don't know. And when you're going into a situation, whether it is in a dating relationship or a trying to teach your child relationship or trying to get hired for a new job to be an employee, or if you're trying to go sell yourself or your company to somebody else, you don't know what you don't know. And as she said when she was sharing her story, what a shame when you get down to the decision maker, down to the front line where all of your dreams could be yours, but because for whatever reason you just didn't know what you didn't know who to ask what you didn't know, whatever the reason is, you fall on your face because you didn't do enough homework, you didn't prepare yourself properly. And that's a crazy thing. So how does somebody go about, I mean, obviously they could get your book and get some coaching from you, so that's one way. But I think on a broader scale, what are some just practices from a concept level, before we get specific, from a concept level that people could go through just to make sure that they did their due diligence to find out what somebody might want to know?
I think one of the things that people don't do enough is actually just ask questions. So most people are actually very helpful and are open to to be as helpful and encouraging as they can, particularly when they're in a position where they're thinking about, in these examples, investing in startups. They're thinking about doing that because they actually want to encourage startups. So they're not coming at it from a negative place. So it never hurts to phone up and say, could we just ask some questions before we come in to see you? Could we ask, what your procurement process is like, what your requirements are to work with a company, what your key strategic aims might be for the coming year, so that we can make sure that when we come to talk to you, we're really able to talk to you about things that you will care about. And I think sometimes people think that they can't do that they must just prepare themselves somehow and turn up and hope that it is the right thing that they're saying. And it feels like this kind of impenetrable wall. We can't ring them up and ask them that. We should just turn up and look like we know everything. And actually, it's much better if you just treat people as humans and talk to them and ask them questions. Because you'll build a relationship. So by the time you get there to pitch to them, you've already got someone sat there who you've had a good chat with. You've shown that you're really interested in their company, and then they're much more likely to listen to you because they know that you're actually really invested and you really want to make this work, rather than you're doing the same old pitch that you've done to the 20 other companies that you've seen this week.
That's so funny. Right before you said build a relationship, I was literally writing. This is probably one of the most important things, because you're building a relationship. You're starting that relationship before you get to the close. If you already have a relationship with everybody on that panel, or at least the company, before you walk through that door and you're on a panel with 20 other people who don't have any relationship, they have to build that relationship in the first 10 minutes. I mean, you see this on Shark Tank all the time, where people come in and they have 5 minutes to do their pitch. Like, for somebody who had called in before or reached out on Instagram or Facebook or read their books and said, hey, this is what you said in your book, how can I clarify that and make sure? For somebody who's already shown that interest, you basically have 90% of the close done. Now all you have to do is show your idea, but they already like your personality. They already know that you're driven, that you're committed, all that. A lot of those questions for an investor or for a spouse or for a babysitter or a nanny, whatever, all of that's already done. All they have to do is sign off on, hey, is this an idea that I align with? And the other thing that I think is really interesting, and I think that hopefully we can have some paradigm shifts around this. I think you have this already, but part of asking questions is not purely so that the person who is doing the asking for money, right? It's not just so that you know what they are looking for, but do them the respect of, maybe you're just not a good fit for that investor. Maybe it's flat out not what they're looking like. Could you structure everything to fit inside of what they're looking for? You probably could present your stuff in a way that they're going to be okay with it, but do them the respect of, if it's not really in alignment with who they are, what their strategies are, what their goals are, then just don't even pitch it. Don't waste your time and don't waste their time. And that's something I've had to learn in a service-based industry. For so long, I thought, man, I'm the person who needs it to be able to help everybody. But after you have a few clients of like, man, I've made it so that I'm always trying to cater to this customer that I don't actually like, and they don't like me, and we have different goals. I over the last, I don't know, probably 7 or 8 months, I've completely shifted into, hey, look, this is what I do. I'm interviewing you as a client to see if I even want you as a client. I don't need your business. I don't even want your business. If you don't want to work with me, definitely don't want to work with you, right? That paradigm shift helps you so much with clarifying, how to actually present your message.
Yeah, and I think it's even more important when you're looking for investment, because a client, you can be, even if it's a bit of a difficult relationship, you could be done and dusted with them in a few weeks, and then you can kind of go, well, we've put that one to bed, they're gone, it wasn't comfortable, but it's done. But an investor, you're starting a long-term relationship with. It might be 5, 6, 8 years before you sell out and exit. So you've got that person as part of your company until that time, unless you manage to buy them out somehow. So, and if they are a significant enough investor, they may well expect to have a say in how your company operates. They may expect a seat on your board. So, you've got to be really certain that they are as right for you as you are right for them. And if either of those sides is not the right shape, then trying to do that kind of square peg in the round hole is not going to work for either of you.
Yeah, and it's not something that you want to embellish or make something look better. I have been going through, at the end of last year, I went through a bunch of compliance, and on the one hand, you're like, okay, well, the natural man of you or a woman wants to have a yes. You want to hear a yes, and so you are structuring how you're saying stuff and letting people know what's going on in a way that's going to help them say yes. But if you have to alter or even like somewhat make something sound better than it actually is, even in your own mind, then you're on the wrong track. I try and make it sound as bad as it possibly could be to my compliance people. So then I'm like, is this allowed? If this is as bad, like this is a worst case scenario, right? Is that okay? No. Okay, well, where's that line then? Because that's really what you want to know, what's the worst case scenario, and are they okay with that? Mm-hmm. Same thing when I was dating my wife. Hey, here's the worst case of Sam. Here's all of his stuff. It's not just like I brush my teeth, I comb my hair, and then as soon as we get married, none of that's happening anymore. No, like, here's the worst case scenario. Are you okay with the worst case of Sam? If you're okay with that, then we're golden, because I'm only going to get better. But it's the same philosophy when you're in these relationships. It's better to almost make yourself sound worse than way better than you are. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that from your perspective?
I think transparency and honesty with potential investors is vital. Obviously, you are trying to attract investment, so you do need to kind of positively pitch, but not to the extent that you are going to over-exaggerate what can be achieved or create false expectations that you can never deliver, because again, you're just undermining that relationship from the start. So you've got to be realistic. You've got to not tell them that you're going to make £1 million next Tuesday when actually there's no hope of that ever happening. So I think that's key, but to me, that's just that's kind of core of all my business relationships. Though I don't want business relationships that aren't transparent and honest and built on real foundations. If they're not, then what good is it really doing either of us? So there's a cost otherwise.
Absolutely. So when you were going through, because now I want to get into what exactly are they, when you're going through and asking all these people, what are they looking for? How are they, from their perspective, we're going to step into their shoes, how are they making sure that everything's open and transparent? What are things that they're looking for? And don't be shy necessarily with time. It's okay. But I would love to know, like, what is a company, an investor of different types, what are they looking for primarily? What are some make or break deals, top 3 things that they'll say no to, top 3 things that they really want to see in good order? What are things like that?
So there are some specific things that they will look for, and then there are also cross checks that they will do. So specific things that they will look for is is product market fit. If they don't think your market is big enough for your product, if there isn't sufficient demand for your product to achieve the size of company that you would need to grow to get them sufficient return on their investment, they're not going to be interested. You could have come up with the most exciting revolution in paper clips ever, but if there's no market for that, then they're not going to get a good return on their investment. So that's kind of straight up, big thing that they're going to look for. They also, people invest in people. So investors are always really interested in who the founder is or the co-founders, how they operate as people. Are they able to listen? Because it's highly likely that your investors are far more experienced than you are. And you need to be able to take on board advice and not, it doesn't mean you have to do everything they say, but the ability to listen is something that pretty much 99% of investors that I spoke to said was just a prerequisite if they can't listen. And then also, because not just the founder is important, but the team, particularly where you're kind of past idea and you've got a few employees and you've got a management team, investors are also very keen on founders who know when to shut up, who know when to let their team speak, so that, if questions are thrown out to the founder and their management team, the founder will go, well, that's, this person should answer that question because that's their area. That they don't try and always field all the questions, that they show that they are working as a team, that they trust each other and they're working as that kind of cohesive unit. Because, startup world is hard. And if you can't work as an effective team, you're not going to scale your company and achieve massive growth effectively either. So it's really important how you kind of behave in the room. And then in terms of the cross checks that I mentioned, investors will ask things like, what's your vision for the company? Where do you see it being in 3 years' time or 5 years' time? And partly that's for them to judge whether they want to be on that journey with you, whether that is a journey that they're interested in. But also they're then looking at the amount of the raise that you're asking for and saying, well, that vision that they've just described, can they afford that vision with the raise that they're asking for? Are they raising the right amount of money to achieve that vision that they've just told me about? Or have they got their maths wrong? Have they not understood what it would cost them as a company to achieve that? So each time you tell an investor a fact or a statement about your company or what you want to achieve, they're going to cross-check that back and say, well, how does that tie in with the raise amount? Or how does that tie in with the HR plans you've got? Or how does that tie in with your global expansion plans? It all cross-checks backwards and forwards. So being able to really objectively look at your whole proposal and cross-check it yourself before you go and talk to investors is vital, because otherwise they will find a hole. They will say, you said that you're going to acquire 50,000 new customers in the first year, but your marketing budget is only £20,000. You're not going to acquire that many customers with a marketing budget that small. It's unrealistic. So that, cross-check back. So I think those are some of the big things that they really look for.
So how do you, as a professional yourself, what's a process? I don't know if process is the right word for right now, but how long of a time span does that generally take to really go through and answer a lot of these questions? Some of it's just like inherent as far as personality. Are you willing to listen? Are you willing to be a leader rather than the know-it-all type person? That's a personality trait. That's not really something that you can buy or purchase or put together, but it does take time to build a team. But hopefully you're already with a team that's doing that. If not, getting coached on how to do that. But like product market analysis, what's an adequate time of history that they want to see you working as a company or working on something before they're really wanting to go?
It depends entirely on what stage you're at, and how much investment you're looking for. So if you're at pre-seed stage, which is basically an idea, then they're not going to expect you to have a sizable team of people. They're not going to expect you to have customers yet because you haven't got a product yet. They're not going to expect you to have, therefore, any revenue. So, you are a pre-revenue business that is seeking funding to perhaps build your minimum viable product. So they're not expecting much, but then also you won't be asking for much money at that point. It will be, somewhere between 75k and a couple of 100,000, something, along those lines. So it's not massive amounts of money. As you go up the scales and you say, well, actually, we're at siege level now. So we've got a product and we've got a bit of customer traction and we've got the start of some revenue. And now we've got a team of 2 or 3 or 4 people. There's now enough history that the investor will start to ask more questions, more in depth. And then when you get up to a Series A raise, and perhaps the company's now been running 2 or 3 years, and you've got, real customers, you've got revenue every month, you might even be turning a profit for some startups early on. That, there's one I'm working with at the moment that's already in profit since year 1. Then obviously investors will want to ask a lot more questions and see a lot more detail because there is more actionable kind of history to the company. So it really depends on what stage you're at and how much money you're asking for.
That's cool. I love it. I think this is something that for me, one, I just want to know about for myself, but 2, it's applicable knowledge. I think it has to do with, again, a lot of these questions, if you took money out of it and you said, put in an emotion or something, they're applicable questions to almost every area of your life. What these people are making investments into other people, whether it's a spouse, a child, right? You got to give them a reason to want to invest into that relationship, of any type of relationship. And to be frank, you probably needed to do this even with yourself. Like, sit down, take maybe a day or 2 and really analyze, what value am I adding myself? Why should I be investing in my health, in my mentality growth, in my things? Like, what level of investment do I need right now? And start time blocking some time of saying, look, this time is invested. This is how much I bargained for out of me versus my employer or my wife or my children, whatever. And I need this time to become who I want to become. And what's it realistically going to take?
Yeah. And, that kind of, those levels of investment that I just spoke about, kind of, the pre-seed and seed and Series A, if you look at that even as an employee, when you go for your first job when you're 16 or 18, you're effectively at pre-seed stage. You're just an idea as an employee. You've got no background really apart from your education to share. So the interview process at that age is short, and there isn't much that employers can really ask you in those kind of interviews apart from working out if you're the kind of person that they want on their team. But then as you get further through your career, then the interviews get lengthier. The employers want to know more things about your history. They want to know what extra value you bring with you that you would add to the job. So, the same things apply completely in an employed role when you're going for a new job as if you're going to an investor as a company.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me the story of your biggest naysayer when you're moving transitions, you're thinking of leaving your company, spend more time with your kids, potentially with your spouse. What was that transition like, and who was your biggest naysayer, and how did you kind of put your goals and dreams above anybody else's opinion?
The transition point was I guess I was very fortunate that I happened across a couple of organizations at the point when I was thinking about that kind of transition. One was a program for women executives, and it was supposed to help you look at your career and decide what you'd like to do as your next step in your career. And I got it was just an online thing with some presentations that you could listen to, but it was very thought-provoking, and I got about 3 weeks in to listening to these sessions, and realised that actually I didn't want an employed career anymore, and it really kind of provoked my thoughts to that extent that I said, actually, no, I do want to start my own company, and then through some books that I read, and through going and asking some questions, asking people questions, I also found a business accelerator that I joined, so that I was part of a cohort of people who were doing the same kind of thing as me, starting up their company, who were all on that same journey. So I didn't feel that I was so alone, as it were, in trying to do something different. I think, unfortunately, my biggest naysayer is probably myself, rather than anyone around me. So I've been really fortunate that people around me have been very positive and very encouraging, and it's more my own self-belief that could be limiting if I let it. That I have to encourage myself and fight off the old imposter syndrome, and really try to remember the value that I bring. So yeah, I think that's the key, really.
Yeah, I love that. Just thinking, okay, the best way to silence naysayers is to remove yourself as far away from them and change your associations. So that was number one. But number two, she said she's probably your biggest naysayer, and that can be kept in check. All of your doubts, your insecurities, your imposter syndrome, that can be kept in check if you have the right associations around you who are constantly building you up, believing in you, and sharing their belief in you. So I think associations is, for me at least, it's definitely been one of my biggest things to help me move past the naysayers in my life, is just to change who I associate with the majority of the time. So if you were to say if you were to give us one specific habit, mindset, or behavior that you've used most consistently in your life to build a meaningful legacy, what would that be?
I think it's plan repeatedly. So I'm constantly reviewing where I want to get to, constantly checking if the plan is that now the right steps to get me to there. I don't believe in leaving these things to chance. I want to know exactly what I'm trying to achieve, and that I'm definitely doing the right steps to get me to that point. And that might mean that I change that plan often, because factors outside of my control will happen. Good things, not so good things. but that means that I have to keep revisiting that and be really clear still on what my focus is. And then that enables me to, to create the things that I'm really setting out to create, rather than getting distracted or knocked off of my path by things happening, or just not investing my time in the right things. So I spend, I do kind of big global plans, if you like, of large scale goals, but then also, I'm a real daily list maker, and then I write down everything that's in my head that I'm thinking, right, all of these things need to happen today. But then it's a real step back and, okay, but which are the ones that are going to make the biggest difference? Which are the ones that are the most urgent or the most important, that just have to get done first? And if the others don't happen, the world doesn't end. You just do them, another day. And that constant kind of plan and prioritize is really what keeps me on track and helps me create that legacy, I guess.
Yeah, I love it. That, I think planning and being intentional, that actually lends to really the whole entire conversation of as far as like how to present yourself to an investor. She's doing that in her own life to make sure that she's on track with her own stuff and adjusting when facts change and she needs to make those adjustments, she's making those. So if we wanted to reach out to you, obviously you have your book that's out in March, but how else could we get access to you if somebody listening to this is thinking, man, I want to bring this idea to an investor? What would that process look like? How could we get in touch with you, and how could we reach out to you and get maybe a few questions answered and ask some questions?
Sure. So I am very active on LinkedIn. So you can just look me up as Julie Barbe on LinkedIn. My company's website is spark-consulting.co.uk. There's a good scorecard on there that you can take to understand whether your company is investor ready. So you can answer a set of questions and get a score at the end that tells you how ready you are, which is a good test. And then there are contact details on there as well that you can get in touch and ask questions from that point on.
Awesome. I think that this cannot be stressed enough. Most of the guests that I have on the Fuel Your Legacy show, they all have some sort of free content, free preparation thing, so you can be prepared to meet with them or somebody in their field and really help you get there. And they've put in a lot of effort and time and work to kind of duplicate and mass produce. I don't know if that's the right word on either of them, but basically help you be ready to even talk to them. So yes, they can help you get ready to talk to an investor in Julie's case, but maybe you need something to get ready to talk to them. And rather than them taking their time to answer questions that they answer for everybody, they give you a list of things to answer before you ever meet with them. That way they can actually help you. Because otherwise you may call them and say, well, where do I start? That's not a good question for a professional like Julie, myself, or like, they're like, well, where are you? We don't even know where you are. So please take advantage of this free stuff, because it only helps you be prepared more when you are talking to her. And if you had already done all those things and then you reached out and said, hey, I have some questions, maybe she could go and find out, hey, well, where are you at currently? Send me your scorecard and let's look over it together. Now you've just incredibly increased your chances of actually getting help. So please don't neglect, if you are going to reach out to her, which I really hope you do, go through her process and take advantage of the free things that she's created to help you before you ever get talking to her. Fair enough?
Yeah.
Awesome. So this next section is called Legacy on Rapid Fire. I'm going to ask you 4 questions. We're going to go through these fast, 1-word to 1-sentence answers more on the 1-sentence side of things. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Awesome. What do you believe is holding you back from reaching the next level of your legacy today?
Time. I need to hire more people.
Okay. That question is perfectly in response to what I just said. Don't waste her time. She's done stuff to create time, created systems and things to help you do stuff that you can do on your own. So respect her time. Second, what do you believe the hardest thing you've ever accomplished has been?
Probably having my son. Not that he's difficult, but giving birth, that's just about as hard as it gets. Literally, about the week after he was born, I felt like if I can do that, I can do anything, because that's as hard as it's ever going to get.
That's awesome. That's what my wife said about childbirth. I'm so grateful that I will never have to experience it. Yeah. So what do you think your greatest success at this point in your life has been?
I think it's been building my company to the point that it's at now. Turning something that was just a thought, that was just an idea, into an actual reality where I'm able to help people make a difference with their own companies. Feels pretty damn good.
Awesome. And what books would you recommend to the Fuel Your Legacy audience?
There are two that I love to. One is that I refer all of my startup founders to, which is a book called What Got You Here Won't Get You There. Because when you start a company, it takes a certain something to get you started, but then to continue as the CEO of that company and take it to the next level, the next stage, you need a different set of skills. So that book is really good. And then also a book called Key Person of Influence by Daniel Priestley. So Dan runs the business accelerator that I joined, and that was the book I read before I went on to that business accelerator that really helped me shape my own company's value proposition and get really clear about what I was doing and accelerate my own progress. So
awesome. And then she didn't mention it, but I'm going to mention it for her. Go get her book, get on the pre-order list or whatever. Are You Investor Ready? I promise you this book, because I read a lot of books, right? I haven't read her book, but just from the title and having had this conversation, these questions are applicable in every area of your life. The concept, the mindset of, are you investor ready? Are you ready to go present yourself to somebody? Those things are applicable in every area of your life. So go get the book. So I do it all the time. People are like, what books would you recommend? And I forget to recommend my own book. I'm like, I wrote the thing. I obviously think it's important, but I forget to recommend my own book. So I'm not going to let you out like that. No, go get her book as well. Are you going to put it on Audible or where is it going to be?
So it will be on Amazon, but before launch, there'll also be a sign up on the website so that you can sign up to be alerted once it's available for pre-order.
Good. Yes. And then as soon as it gets on Audible, you let me know. I really like listening to things.
Yeah.
I'm a very slow reader. So I do read, but not as many books as I listen to. So awesome. So here's the final question. Now, you probably have heard this final question before, which is good. Hopefully we're in alignment here. The question is kind of, what legacy are you building? So if we were to pretend that you've died and you were able to come back and kind of listen in on a conversation that's happening with your great grandchildren, 200 years from now, 6 generations. I mean, this is a long ways away. You've been gone for a long time. What do you want them to be saying about your legacy 6 generations from now?
2 things. One, I want them to be talking about the fact that my son went on to start his own company because he grew up in a household where being an entrepreneur was natural and the only option wasn't employment. So that's one thing. I want him to have that kind of view that starting a business from an early age is possible, because it wasn't something that I grew up with. So I'd like him to have that view. The other thing is that I've aligned my business with the UN Global Development Goals, and specifically supporting the gender equality goal, which means that 2% of all our revenue is donated to a charity called Safe Steps. And Safe Steps helps women who've been the victims of domestic abuse to get away from their abusers to a safe place and to build a new life for them and their children. So that legacy will be that actually there will be women and children who have escaped abuse and built safe lives for themselves going forward. And that's very important to me as well.
That is incredible. That's the second part. I mean, I also want my son to start his own business. But the second part is very, very much in alignment with my story and why I am committed to helping people understand how money works. Because of domestic violence, because of anxiety, depression, suicide, all these social issues, from the sociology research, a lot of those social issues are specifically in lower socioeconomic status homes. And a lot of women, specifically women and children, they don't leave the abusive situations because they aren't confident in their financial ability to provide for themselves. And so if all we could do as a society, if all I accomplish is helping one person, one woman, one child have the financial confidence to go build their legacy and their dreams, and be able to become independent like that, then I feel I've succeeded. I love that that's your goal, because that is the same as mine. Like, I legitimately, that is my commitment to why I do what I do. So I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that.
No problem.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. We're going to be ending here, but all the links will be in the bio here. If you want to read the transcript of this, you can do that as well. And then her links to specifically get connected with her on LinkedIn, her website, and I'm assuming there will be the pre-order pop-up or somewhere so you can get access to her book. You don't want to miss out on that. And then plus those other two books, What Got You Here, What Got You There. I've heard about it a lot, but I have not read that yet. So that's a book that I'm going to have to read. And then Key Person of Influence, also another book that I've never heard of that I'll need to read. So this was good for me because it gave me some new things to go chase down. I'm excited.
Super.
Thanks for joining us. If what you heard today resonates with you, please like, comment, and share on social media. Tag me, and if you do give me a shout out, I'll give you a shout out on the next episode. Thanks to all of those who've left a review. It helps spread the message of what it takes to build a legacy that lasts. And we'll catch you next time on Fuel Your Legacy.